Hey everyone, it's Lori from Scraps by Sissy. Welcome to another fabulous Friday. Today we're going to create this fall card using a couple of different techniques. We're going to do some watercoloring, some heat embossing, and this is also using the Eclipse technique. So let's get started. We're going to be using the Colorful Seasons bundle. Here's the stamp set, and look at all of the framelits you're going to get with it, framelits and thinlits. We're actually only going to use these two leaves. The cardstock that you're going to be using is a piece of Cajun Craze, and it's cut at 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. You'll have a piece of Old Olive that's cut at 3 3/4 by 5. A piece of shimmery white. You can see all the glitter on that, I think. And that's cut at 3.5 by 4 3/4. I used some of the gold foil to cut out the intricate gold leaf. And then we'll also be using some of the gold metallic dots, or shapes I should say. So to watercolor, you're going to need, the colors we're going to be using are crushed curry, pumpkin pie, Old Olive, and Cajun Craze. Now, I'm going to be using one of our aqua painters. Make sure you have a paper towel handy. If you've never watercolored, you're going to squeeze the stamp pad together, the lid to the pad itself, so that the ink pulls up. And I'm just going to start with and go from lightest to darkest and just kind of brush over the cardstock. Now I will say be careful not to get too heavy-handed with the water, because your ink, or your cardstock will warp. It does tend to flatten out some when it's drying, but you also don't want it to pill. The shimmery white tends to take the water fairly nicely. So I'm just going to brush that over. I like it for all the shimmer that it gives. And we're going to use the Old Olive. And you'll see that the more water you add, the more the colors will bleed together. And if that's a look you're looking for, then by all means, add more water. Okay. And then in between colors, I just squeeze it out over the scrub and then just kind of wipe it off that way. That way you're not transferring color on your pads. So the Cajun Craze, I want to be real light-handed because it is the darkest, and you can see there's a lot of water pooling here. So we'll just kind of go back and forth a little bit. Okay. Looks like it's bleeding quite a bit. Once it dries, it'll still have the bleeding effect, but it'll be fine. When it dries, I have a piece that I've already done so that you didn't have to wait for it to dry, and I've already cut the leaf out. But I used the Wink of Stella and went over it to give it even more shimmer. So we'll set that aside. Now what we're going to do is we're going to stamp the sentiment. Since we're heat embossing with gold embossing powder, you're going to be using the Versamark. That's a watermark ink. And since these are photopolymer, I like to use the Stamp and Pierce mat so that I make sure I get full coverage of the ink. Oh, almost forgot one of the most important parts with this. Being that we have watercolored, I want to use the embossing buddy to get all the static off of here so that you don't have smudges of embossing powder. So I'll go back and stamp this. Okay. Now, if you haven't heat embossed, this becomes quickly one of your favorite techniques. Every time my girls come over to stamp with me, this is one of the things they love to do. It's one of those magical things. Okay, so we're gonna, yeah, that looks pretty good. You see? So we'll set this aside. We're gonna use the heat gun. There's 2 settings on it. The first setting is to dry ink, which would work well with the watercoloring that we did earlier. And the second one is for the heat embossing the powder. And basically what happens is that powder melts and becomes texture when it melts and cools. Okay, isn't that beautiful? Give that a second to dry. So when it's still hot, because the powder is melted, you could actually smudge it if you touched it too soon. So we'll let that dry. Okay, so to adhere the oak leaf, the intricate cut one, onto the solid, I'm going to use some Tombow glue and a sponge to get it all covered on the back. Now, you can also use the adhesive sheets, but I am out, so we're using the next best thing. And basically, by putting it on with a sponge, you'll cover and not have to sit there and dot, 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 dot like I've done in the past. Set it aside. And this is our silicone sheet that keeps your work surface clean. Once I finish the video, I'll just go wash this off with hot soapy water and it'll be good as new. The nice thing about the Tombow is it gives you a little bit of wiggle room to make sure you get everything right where it needs to go. Okay, so now we'll glue him down. And when you've watercolored, you want to make sure, in fact, we'll use the adhesive sheet for this too. You want to get your adhesive right down to the edge so that if the paper has warped at all, it'll lay flat on the cardstock. Okay, put him down. The first card I did has only got 1 dimensional in height. I think I'm going to try 2 and see how that goes. And what I mean by that is layering them one on top of the other. Yeah, I like that. I like it a lot better. You see the difference. Okay, we'll add some of the gold. And we're done. Isn't that a cute card? And it's not really that difficult to do at all. If you like what you see here, please leave a comment. Let me know. You can go to scrapsbysissy.com for the blog post to get all the measurements and the supply list. And it'll also give you a link to my online store. Have a great Friday, and I'll see you next week.